What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 action cards from Wave 2 of the Transformers trading card game, Rise of the Combiners. Now, I've already done my top 10 characters from Wave 2, I'll pop a link to that video in the description. And before we start here, I should give a huge shout out to all the lovely people that joined in on the poll that I put up on the Facebook group, because I like getting many opinions before I do a video like this. I think it helps. So, let's have a roll, shall we? And starting off at number 10, we've got Reckless Charge. It's got an orange icon, good for attacking. And one of your characters gets +4 attack until end of turn. And at end of turn, you do free damage to that character. Taking the free damage sucks, but +4 attack is something which is just so hard to replicate. Back in Wave 1, we had Grenade Launcher, which is fine, but it falls off at the end of the turn. That's not terribly ideal. You don't get +4 attack without a downside, but +4 attack is great. And as a side note, you do occasionally find characters like Ransack that actually want to be damaged because they gain advantages when they are damaged. So, you know, in that regard, could be kind of useful. In at number 9, we've got Steamroll, and we know that Steamroll is good because Steamroll is exactly the same as Grimlock's bot mode ability from Wave 1. If you would do enough to KO a character, and you can use Steamroll to designate any of your characters here, then your opponent has to take any extra damage onto a character of their choice. If you do 10 damage and you only need to do 8 to get a KO, your opponent's got to take 2 somewhere else. It only works once, you can't transfer to a third character. Similarly, we looked in the rules roundup this week that you cannot just play multiple Steamroll and transfer the damage multiple times. There's only one lot of damage. But the fact that you're not wasting any damage here, the fact that you can potentially KO multiple characters in a single turn, yeah, that's pretty good. Puts it in at number 9. In at number 8, we've got Vaporize. Lets you scrap an enemy upgrade. And we see this quite a lot in Wave 2. It's extremely similar to a card that we had in Wave 1. This is Ramming Speed with a blue icon. And Ramming Speed was a good card. It still is a good card. Lets you scrap any upgrade. We've got a million different cards that let you scrap upgrades, but these are the two that just flat out let you scrap an upgrade of your choice. The thing is, if you're playing an aggro deck, you really want Ramming Speed because it's got a blue icon. But if you're playing a defensive, a blue-minded deck, Vaporize is great because now you've got that blue icon. It really is as simple as that. In at number 7, we've got Swindled. Orange icon. Draw 2 cards. Scrap 2 cards from your hand. If you began the game with only Decepticon characters, you may play an upgrade. This is really nice. Now, yeah, you got to scrap cards from your hand, and that's a little bit of a pain. You're not gaining a card advantage. You don't have any more cards at the end of the turn than you had at the beginning, but you're getting to cycle your hand here. You're getting to get different cards in your hand, which is useful. And then you get to play an upgrade, which is really good. Playing an extra upgrade really is a fantastic thing to do. We got new designs back in Wave 1 that just let you play an upgrade. Well, this lets you play an upgrade, has the same icon, but also lets you cycle some cards. Only for Decepticon decks, but there's going to be plenty of Decepticon decks out there. Now, confidence did not come anywhere near as highly in the poll, nor did I really expect it to. It's the same thing, but it's Autobots and you get to play an action, not an upgrade. Why is that not as good? Very simply because this is an action. So you're playing an action to play another action. You could just play a different action rather than cycling your cards and then playing an upgrade. Just to be clear, doesn't make confidence a bad card. That one still received a bunch of votes, but generally speaking, playing actions to cycle and then play an upgrade is more useful because there are just better drawing actions that you could play. In at number 6, we've got Marksmanship. Marksmanship, lovely little card, blue icon. If you have a ranged character on the battlefield, you do 2 damage to an enemy in bot mode. This is really good. Now, you've got to have a ranged character on the battlefield, but you can control that pretty easily. And admittedly, it's not going to work if all of your opponent's characters are in ult mode. And similarly, your opponent can just keep the character they don't want to take the damage in ult mode, forcing you to do the damage somewhere else. But firstly, that's just not always going to be practical for them. And secondly, if they're deliberately keeping a character in ult mode so you can't do extra damage, that's still a win for you, ladies and gentlemen. We saw Zap in Wave 1. That does 1 damage. This does 2. We saw Plasma Burst in Wave 1. That does 2 damage, but doesn't have an icon. This does 2 damage and has a blue icon. It's a very good card. There's a couple of stipulations, but they really aren't the hardest ones to meet ever, and that's why it comes in at number 6. In at number 5, we've got Heavy-Handed. Heavy-Handed has a blue icon and grants one of your characters +2 attack until end of turn. If you're attacking an enemy that has fewer stars than it, you get Pierce 4. Really good for something like an Optimus Prime Battlefield Legend, which is sitting there with 13 stars. You know it's going to work, unless you happen to be against a Combiner or Metroplex. And this is literally the mirror image of the bigger they are in Wave 1. The bigger they are gave you +2 attack and allowed you Pierce 4 if you were going against one that had more stars than you. And that was a good card that a bunch of people have used very nicely indeed. If you're playing a team with big powerful bots, this gives you a huge advantage. Arguably, this is even better than the bigger they are, because littler bots may only have 4 or 5 health to begin with, making them much easier to take down. There are some bots for which PS4 will guarantee a KO. In at number 4, we've got Pep Talk. And Pep Talk is a fairly Blair kind of card. Draw 2 cards. That's it. You just flat draw 2 cards. The thing is, we didn't really have anything in Wave 1 that allowed us to do that. Yeah, we had Equipment Enthusiast that let you draw 1 card for each upgrade you've got. But even that didn't exactly give you the best draw all the time. And we got Testify in Wave 2. But that lets each player draw 2 cards, which you generally don't want to do. And there is a card that lets you draw 3, but that's a star card, so I don't know how often you really want to be taking advantage of that. And we're left with this potentially meh card, which is actually really quite good, because it's the best pure draw we've actually got. I know, right? Little bit strange. Although, incidentally, in the Devastator deck, we got Work Overtime. And to be clear, Work Overtime lets you draw until you got 4 cards in hand. Generally speaking, that's going to be better than Pep Talk. But that wasn't in Wave 2, so it's not eligible to be on the list. In at number 3, Press the Advantage, a card which does exactly what it says on the tin. It's got an orange icon and a green, first green we've seen on this list so far. When you're battling, you can, at the end of the battle, swap a card in your hand for a card you flipped with a green icon. Choose one of your Autobots to get +2 attack, and an enemy Decepticon to get -2 defense. It's not quite +4 attack like we saw with Reckless Charge, but it's really not a million miles away from that. It's great for attacking. It's only really good in Autobot decks, but like we talked about earlier, there's going to be plenty of all Autobot decks. It's not +4 attack, but an awful lot of the time, it looks an awful lot like it, and we've already mentioned that that is not something we generally get lightly. In at number 2, we've got Espionage. 1 white and a green icon. Very nice. Choose a battle icon colour, look at your opponent's hand and scrap a card from it that has a battle icon of that colour. So you denote blue, and you can discard any card from your opponent's hand that has at least 1 blue icon. And it won't always work, but if you see your opponent get a card back with a green icon, you know it's in hand, you can scrap it. If your opponent's playing an aggro orange deck, you basically get a choice of any card in their hand. If you see them playing a defensive blue deck, you essentially get a choice of any card in their hand. There will be the occasional games where your opponent's playing a mixture of orange and blue, so you really are going to have to guess and it might not work. But even in that situation, a little way into the game, you're going to know roughly what cards they're likely to be playing or they are playing that you're scared of, and you can just try and go after those by selecting the right icon. But in at number 1, no surprise for me, and I'm assuming probably not a big surprise for most of you, it's Leap of Faith. I was going to put this at number 1 regardless of what the poll said, and I was going to get ready for any backlash that might come if people disagreed with me, but the poll wasn't even close. Second place with 35 votes, Espionage. First place with 71, Leap of Faith. It's got double the votes of second place. It just lets you play the top 2 cards of your deck. And what is so ridiculously good about this, it's kind of like Field Communicator. It lets you play a card that you don't have in your hand, except Field Communicator does 1 and this does 2. You just play the top 2 cards of your deck, and sure, there are going to be occasional cards you'd rather not play. Maybe you're playing Photon Bomb and you hit it and have to do 2 damage to all your characters in a time you don't really want to. But again, you know your deck, you know what you've played, you know what's in the scrap pile, you can make that decision. The thing is, it's a star card. It takes away some of the stars that you could otherwise use for building your team. And it's still, far and away, the best card, battle card, in the set. That should tell you something about how powerful this actually is. It's a phenomenal card, and it deserves to be number 1. Something like Brainstorm lets you play an extra 2 actions, and okay, Brainstorm's a great card. I don't think anyone's going to argue Brainstorm's not a great card. But the thing about Brainstorm is you've got to have the cards in your hand. So there are going to be times you just don't have 2 actions, so Brainstorm's not going to work. You've got to keep the number of cards in your hand high so you can have a lot of actions so you can take advantage of it. Leap of Faith, you just play the top 2 cards of your deck. It can be the only card in your hand and you just play the top 2 cards of your deck. It's a phenomenal card and it thoroughly deserves its spot at number 1. But I would very much like to know what you think about this, ladies and gentlemen, so please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at the Wossy, where we talk about games like Transformers, but a whole bunch of others. Also, I would love to see your full top 10 list, so, whack it down below. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.